Oscar is not in the meeting. Okay, Daniela, shall we start?
Yep.
Okay, let's start. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So, welcome to Ccamp session. So, actually, this meeting is a kind of face-to-face meeting, but the chairs and the secretaries cannot make the trip. So, sorry about that. And also, it seems that just no one from Ccamp group to attend this meeting in person. So there's no one to sit in the chair up front. So yeah, let's start. Next page. Daniele.
I'm on the note 12. Can you see it?
It begins start. Yeah. Okay. So let's start from the load where I think this is a reminder about the IETF policies, which says that by participating in the IETF, you agree to follow IETF process and the policies, including patent policies. Next. And then there's a piece of the information about the conduct guideline. The IESG has asked all the chairs to remind that the working group the need for appropriate behavior, which means that any time in any cases we all should respect each other, especially extend the respect and the courtesy to our colleagues when we are discussing or debate something. Next. So session, this time we have only one session with 2 hours. Yeah. Next. So this agenda. So this time we have 7 presentations. Actually, most of the drafts have been presented in the previous meetings. So I think actually we should have sufficient time for discussion. Next. Yeah, there's some tips about this meeting. Actually, this time it's a face-to-face meeting. So usually there will be some, in-person participants, but for us, there's none. So actually, we can skip this kind of thing. We all are remote. So I think in the recent meetings, we all participate in the meeting by the remote echo. So we know how to participate in this kind of conference call. Next. So for the mid echo, I think one piece information is very important. When you are going to speak or comment, please raise your hand to end the session queue. Yeah. Next. And the minute takers. So actually, we have the online tools to capture the minutes. So if anyone could, take help us to take the minutes online, that will be much appreciated. And also, I ask Hao-Mian to help us at least. And I'm not sure if Oscar is here or not. Actually, oh, Oscar is online. I think Oscar can also, help us. So for the blue sheets, it will be automatically created. So nothing for us to do. Yeah. Next. IPR process, IPR policies is quite very important. So prior to moving to next step in the working group process, the chairs will send out the IPR polling. For example, before an individual draft becomes a working group document or a working group document goes to last call, we will send out IPR polling to the list. And so it requires all the authors and contributors to reply the IPR polling as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will delay your draft to move forward. Next. So the things about the mailing list, we always encourage people to use the mailing list as much as possible to discuss anything about the, technologies inside the scope of the Ccamp working group. And there's important to remind working group consensus is determined on the mailing list. Even though we get some consensus, in the online conference or face-to-face meeting, we still need to bring it to the list, to confirm the consensus. Next. Okay, it's for you, Daniele.
Yes, thanks, Fatai. So let's go through a little bit an update on the working group status. Since last meeting, we don't have any new RFCs or documents in the editor queue. Actually, we have a couple of drafts which are fairly in an advanced stage. We have the OTN beyond the 100 gigabits draft, which is waiting for the Shepherd write-up. And Oscar is taking of that because both Fatai and us are involved in the draft. And the other one is the Transport NBI applicability document. These are the documents that we have on agenda today, the working group documents and agenda, the optical impairment topology Young model, RFC 1993 bis, which is the update of the layer 0 types. We have the recently adopted OTN slicing draft and the FlexiGrid documents. No big changes since the last meeting on these ones. As I said, the first and the third one are the ones that are past working group last call. And we also have the microwave topology and the WSON tunnel, which we could be ready to move forward soon, because if I'm not mistaken, the TIS working group is running right now the last call of the TE model, of the tunnel TE model. A little update on the documents not being discussed today, not an agenda. The client signal Young model, we have minimal updates. It's just keep alive. There are still some pending issues to work on, like resiliency, port layer, etc. And then, I mean, that should be in a fairly good, stable status as well. Then we have the WDM interface LMP. I think that a little bit of review discussion is needed, but also that document is in a pretty stable condition. Then we have the Ethernet client T topology Young and the L1 CSM. They are both pretty stable documents. The layer 1 CSM has been updated and to fix the comments received from the Young dot review. I was wondering whether we should ask the OPSA working group to have a review on this, since all the layer 2 and layer 3 services are in the operation area. What do you think, Fatai? Should we, or maybe John, if you are with us, what do you think? Should we ask them for a review? I mean, I don't know if you already read this document, but it's a sort of layer 1 version of the service models that the operation area has been working on, the layer L2SM and L3SM with the dedicated working groups, and L3NM and L2NM in the OPSA working group.
Yeah, I haven't read them. I mean, what you described makes sense, and early reviews are never a bad idea. So.
Okay,
I
maybe
think reasonable.
we can. Okay, maybe we can do that as a sort of a final check before moving it forward. Layer one types. This was we have minimum updates here as well as the OTN topology Young model. These are the two next in the row to be to go through the last call. OTN tunnel model. This is another document with a dependency on the related document in TIS, so that the IETF. So this will be unlocked as well. We didn't hear from the authors regarding the DWDM interface parameters Young model. That draft expired. So I don't know if any of the authors would like to say something about the plans for the draft. If I'm not mistaken, Gabriele and Gert were holding the pen for this document.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So we are still trying to align this document with the topology, both in terms and also with layer 0 types. So we are kind of waiting a little bit for that to materialize and then update it accordingly.
Okay, great, thanks. Milestones. Actually, it was time to have a refresh of the milestones. This is, let me say, the plan forward. You see there is a pretty dense number of deadlines in the next months. This is due to the fact that we have a number of pretty stable documents, pretty mature documents. Most of them have gone through the Young Daughter review. So we expect in the next months to be ready to progress many documents to the last call. Some of them were, let me say, kept hold by other documents, the non-technological specific ones in TIS. Now that those blocks are removed, we are ready to progress. There is quite some work to do on all technologies. You see microwave, OTN, WSON. So we are planning to keep the Ccamp working group active for the next years at least. Liaisons and communication. We received a communication from Etsy. Actually, this was sent just to the chairs list of TIS, Ops, and Ccamp. I only realized about that in the last days, and I forwarded it to the working group mailing list. So if you search for it in your mailbox, you will find it coming from me and not from Etsy. It's classified as communication because actually the IETF doesn't have a formal liaison relationship with Etsy. But I mean, this is something for information. They are telling us that the ISG NFV has started a work on the WIM, the One Infrastructure Manager, and they are planning to use NetConf, RESTConf, Young models, and base it on ACTN. So that's why these OPSA working group and Ccamp are might be interested in this communication. That's it. Any question before we jump into the first presentation?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please, Sergio.
Okay. Good morning to everybody. I'm going to present an update related to the optical impairment aware topology model. Next. Okay, so from an administrative point of view, we going on to have the weekly call on Tuesday about this draft to discuss the different issue and topics. Related to the update, we have done update both from text point of view in the drafts and the young part. We restructure, we change the front page list, addressing the usual issue about the 5 front page authors list and putting a specific appendix, the other co-author list and contributors. We added text to overcoming an ambiguity present in the text related to what is a switching block that many times is called RODAM and the full equipped device. So we restructure the terminology to clarify RODAM meaning, put I2T reference for that, and introducing terminology for WDM node in the related to the physical device, and the WDM-T node to distinguish the physical device from the T node concept as described in this TE topology. We added text in the section 2.3, also this in the optics of in the view to align with the terminology from ITOT regarding the introduction of to substitute OMS and OTS link with OMS OTS media channel group. And we touched the text 2.4 to add the description of Raman amplification, and we added text to clarify the usage of the term channel versus media channel. So the media channel is described in the G807 as both topology model and related to the resource. In the context of our drafts, we use the term occasionally. We use the term channel to indicate the resource of related to the media channel, so frequency slot or effective frequency slot, without representing topology. From young part, we fix 4 basic issue and introducing the Raman amplification feature. Next, please. So this picture is just to represent and synthesize the changing regarding the terminology. We we represent here the case of integrated WDM nodes, and we put the WDM node as representing the physical device, and the WDM-T nodes in the same way as integrated in the WDMT node related to the concept of RFC 8795. Here we represented the integrated architecture, but the TA node is working in the same way in case of disaggregated architecture. WDM T node hiding what is the interconnection between degree and drop blocks. We change, as said, the OMS and OTS link with the OMS media channel group and OTS media channel group. And this is the representation of the changing. Next. One of the issues that we solve is the fact that we want to use our model to describe also topology where the ROADMs have one or multiple external shelf with optical transponder. The links between the OT hosted in this external shelf can be described with the TIA-Link with optical impairment as we made for the rest. The point is that in this case there is no multiplexing. There is not, and for this reason, even if the optical impairment are the same, we introduce text to describe explicitly these points, so that the impairments related to the link between remote optical transponder located in a different shelf can also be modeled using the same optical impairment as those defined for a link between WDMT nodes. So this is an explicit test that is introduced in the drafts. And in this case, the external shelf can be considered again as a WDMT node, with the only difference that only termination capabilities is presented, not switching. Next. So, as said, we introduce the Raman feature, the Raman amplifier distributed amplifier, and we modeled both the co-propagating Raman amplifier, in which the optical signal is injecting in the same direction of the amplified signal, and the counter-propagating, in which the optical pump is injected in the opposite direction of the optical signal. The Raman, from model perspective, the Raman amplifier is modeled as two OMS element. So a passive fiber that has to take into account the fiber loss, and an amplifier element providing all the properties that we have defined for amplifier. The amplifier element is placed where the pump is located, and we have geolocalization information indicate the location of the pump. And to distinguish the Raman amplifier from, for example, EDFA amplifier, we have in the model the type variety attribute. We introduce specific attributes to model that. That is the Raman direction, to distinguish the co-propagating with respect to the counter-propagating case, and the Raman pump with the frequency and the power related. Next. So this is in here is the young model modification, as we said, highlighted in yellow. There we have under the same structure of the amplifier, and in the group of parameters related to the amplifier parameters, there are the definition of the attributes that I mentioned before. We also added in the context of amplifier the total output power. This is the total output power that represent the output power measure in the related range of frequency that we have as attributes. And this is important, the total output power to recompute the consistency between the span fiber loss with respect to the loss gain in the elements along the OMS link. Next. Okay, this is another issue that we solve in this period, that we wanted to avoid unspecified behavior in case of mandatory attribute. For example, if the server is not present, so to avoid strange value that can be returned because it's mandatory, and so something has to be returned. But even for optional case, we want to distinguish the case in which there is a real problem. For example, the service is not able, from what is the not applicable case. For example, the till for amplifier, the till target attributes is needed and has to be returned in case of IETF amplifier, but is not a problem in case it is not returned, that because is not applicable in case of Raman. So two different cases, and for this point we introduce the type empty, taking from RFC 7951, and we have introduced in the module the description that distinguish the case that if the value of a mandatory attribute is unknown, it must be reported using the empty type. So in case we change many of the type of the attributes, putting the union between specific type as it is now and the case of empty, in case the impossibility to return the value. In case of optional, if it is applicable, as in case of mandatory, it must be reported. In case if it's unknown, it must be reported in the empty type. In case the optional attribute is not applicable to an entity, it must be omitted because it's not present in the data store. This is a sentence introduced in the module description. And next slide, that is
we have Rob in the queue. Do you have a question specific to this slide that maybe we
sorry.
Yes, I do. So Rob Walton, Cisco, I think this is possibly over engineering it. So I don't quite know the cases where you can't return data. If this is a plausible case, or you're thinking just like I want to cover sort of belt and braces and make sure covering all scenarios. I think it would be better if the expectation is you can sometimes not return this value, then don't make it mandatory. If the expectation is that the server should always return this value, if that's sensible and sane, then mark it as mandatory. And if it comes to the case where for some reason a server is unable to return the value, it just doesn't give it to you. So it just doesn't send anything. So I'm not sure that this is a problem you want to solve this way here, because either it's a generic Yang issue and want a generic solution, or otherwise you seem to be sort of engineering a very specific way around this, and I'm not sure that that's a good choice.
Is this something that is already been discussed in NetMod?
Not recently that I can think of. It did come up in the discussion to the NMDA architecture, where there's text in that effectively says that the server's allowed to not return data in these sort of scenarios. The one case that is interesting is if you have telemetry and you're streaming telemetry off the box, then if you don't send a value, then you have a case where you don't know you got no value, or just the receiver's expected to have the previous value it received. But I think this would be worth raising as a more general question on the netmod alias to see what the comments are on this idea.
Yeah, a good observation. The point is that okay, we have also people that is working with us, and we have in parallel already someone that is implementing that, and so the fact to have a strange value that has coming back in case the value is not known, it was a problem during the implementation. So we try to solve in parallel of the description of the drafts also the problem that is coming from, let me say, the experimental field. And so this was apparently a good solution.
Okay.
I mean, I bet it is, but I mean, as Rob said, this is something that needs to be solved in a more general way, probably not in Ccamp, maybe in NetMod.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that in the meantime, what we need to have some solution for that. This is the point.
Well, but if you raise it in the netmod alias and discuss it, hopefully that'll come to a conclusion fairly quickly as to what it is. And if this is deemed to be the right way of doing this, that's great. Then we find out we do it consistently. But I think you'd find that this, in like the Yang Doctor reviews of this document, that this would come up as being an unusual way of modeling this.
Yeah. We can raise the question as a working group if you prefer, or I mean, since most of you are active participants in NetMod, if you wanted to do it yourself, as you prefer. If you believe that raising the question as a working group is better, we can do that. Otherwise, I mean, you can bring the question to the working group, to NetMod, and ask to have it solved in a generic way. As you prefer. Let us know if you want us to raise the issue.
There is Italo in queue.
Yeah, Italo, please.
Thank you. Just on this point, I agree to raise this question to NetMod and to get some advice from them. Just to clarify a bit, the reason why this was requested, if you don't report an attribute, there was an interest for the client to know whether the attribute is missing because it has not to be reported for that specific configuration, or it is missing because for some reasons it's not available, it's unknown. And that's the reason why we had these different, not reporting at all doesn't give this capability to notify the client. But we can clarify this question to the NetMod and get their advice.
Yes, well, probably it will make it more efficient to say this is the problem and we thought to solve it in this way, and we believe that this is the way to solve it, rather than just saying, hey, we have a problem, please solve it. Probably.
and just one other thought on that is, again, I didn't quite pick up the nuance of the different sort of not reporting the values you're saying there, but it may be that you would be better off if you need to get that extra distinction in there to have an enumeration as your second union type, and then you can have a enumerated value that's more clear as to what it means to return that rather than returning null. Like returning empty is quite a strange thing to return operationally.
Sergio.
Okay. Next. Okay, here is the example how is we introduce the modification. So, for example, we have created the list of type def in layer 0 type extension. I don't know, like for example, type def power in dB or null, and in this case we have the union between the power in dB and the empty case. And in parallel, we have changed a lot of attributes, putting the union instead of the single type. This is what we have done. Okay, next. Okay, as usual, we tracking open issue in this link, and we close 9 issue since the last IETF. We have still 11 open issue. Well, we have 11, but there are some issue to these 4 in the first bullet that we already know how to solve that, and so will be solved with the next pull request because already discussed and agreed. The issue 88 they have been already discussed, and we just waiting for text proposal, but also this has been clarified. The issue 79 that is related to the XPath in leafref, and here we need clarification from netmod. We have a specific presentation today for this point. We need to review terminology, and they are young model development process. So not, let me say, directly involve both text and the young part. Next. So we consider that the model is in very good shape. We are analyzing possible needed enhancement, covering new feature, but the model is already in a very good shape. We need to address the remaining issue, and I think we can be ready for a young doctor review, and we plan to have a stable version by the end of the year, so from IETF 115. That's all for my side. Any question?
The way you enjoy your work, it's a very good shape, not just good. So you're satisfied with that. Any question while I pull up the next slides? None. Okay. So I think we can move on.
Okay. Good morning again. I'm Sergio Bellotti again. So this is the new drafts that is the restructure of layer 0 type extension draft with the new name of RFC 9093 bis. Next slides. Okay. So this document is obsoleting the RFC 9093, encompassing the content of RFC 9093 with the content of layer 0 type extension. We are following for this restructure of the document the comment that we received at the IETF 112. And with the last pull request, we restructured the document to become the new one, RFC 9093 bis. For the update, we added also the layer 0 technology specific constraint issue related to the issue 35. So we added GSNR margin and GSNR estimated that are output of path computation. This is coming from the analysis made in the optical path computation drafts. Next, please. Okay, this is the young structure for the new grouping. So we introduce, as I said, the GSNR margin as input of the path computation in the path constraint, and we added the estimated GSNR as output of the path computation. Next. We added more line coding identities. So there was a comment during in the optical impairments that we do not address the gross bit rate. So what we have done to address this issue 100 in optical impairments is to introduce a new leaf that is just for bit rate, that is to indicate the gross bit rate like 100, 200, 300 for optical tributary signal. But we still exploit at line coding bit rate leaf in case of standard reference when there is not just the bit rate that is needed, but for example, also modulation format, because for definition of line coding in ITUT, line coding is more than the line bit rate, is just representing other attributes. Next. Okay, here is the modification we have done related to the issue 99 we discussed before in optical impairment for the empty. In case we do not get value in some cases, so we introduce new type def for that and update types in optical impairments and layer 0 type extension in some grouping with the new type empty and with the union between the value, the former type and the new type empty. Next. So next step for these drafts. So we still need in the restructure of the two documents, so the RFC 9093 and the layer 0 type extension, we need to reconcile the introduction. So the introduction coming from RFC with the new one from the layer 0 type extension. We need to complete the Appendix A because we need to report the changing from RFC 9093. and we plan to fix the remaining issue. That's all for my side.
Thank you. Any questions? So actually here, I mean, we thought it was a good idea to have a BIS with respect to RFC 1993. I don't know. I've seen other working groups having the same issue and solving it in a different way. For example, recently in TIS, I've seen a draft. I don't remember which one, where the authors were requested to just write a small draft with an update. So I don't know. Sorry, John, for bothering you again. I know it's pretty early for you, but can you please confirm that the BIS is the right way to go here? Or do you prefer an update like they are doing in TIS?
I apologize. I was distracted. Say the question again.
So this is we recently published RFC 1993. This is an update to that one. We are adding some parameters, some concepts that we removed in order to have 1993 published pretty fast. I've seen two different ways of solving this issue. The one is to go for a BIS, and the other one is to write a small draft with just an update. I've seen in the past that the BIS was the most widely adopted solution here. I just wanted to have a confirmation from you that this is the right way forward, or if okay, perfect.
I get the question now. Yeah, so I mean, right, you're absolutely right. You could do it either way. I personally like the BIS better because then it keeps all the material in one document.
That's exactly the way we the reason why we chose to go for that.
Okay, thanks.
Rob?
Yes, just to echo what John's saying, I think if you're completely replacing the Yang model before, then doing a BIS and obsoleting the previous one is the best way.
Great, thanks. Fatai?
Last, IETF meeting, there were lots of the discussion on this issue, and there was a consensus that the working group preferred to publish, a kind of BIS RFC. Yeah, so I agree with John.
Good. We are ready for the next presentation.
Oh, voice check. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thank you. So today this is Iowa from FutureWay, and I'm presenting this slides for the framework and data model for OTN slicing on behalf of all the co-authors and contributors. Next page. Okay, so here's a brief updates of the draft since the last IETF. We have this draft. It was a working group adopted, and we have had inter-meeting and discussions on the mailing list about how this draft will be moving forward. The GitHub repository was also transferred to Ccamp with all the records and the meeting minutes in there. So I would encourage everyone to come to the GitHub and check it out. We also have a weekly call on every Thursday on the main site. And for this revision, the main update is on the draft text to address comments and consensus from the discussions. We have done a lot of work with alignment with relevant drafts, which includes the TIS network slicing framework, the network slicing Yang model, and the applicability for ICTN on network slicing, as well as the model, the individual draft on defining the model network slice structure. Next page. So here we like to present some conclusions on the discussions on the way we move forward with OTN slicing. So first of all, there was a very good summary from TEAS on the framework for IETF network slices, thanks to Adrian, in which the two relevant points to OTN slicing is, first of all, the scope for IETF network slice must include any use of, basically it's applicable to any scenarios beyond the 5G. And second is the interest for IETF network slice is to cover the mapping of IETF network slice services to any IETF network, which includes not just IP, but OTN and any technology-specific layers, which then supports our conclusions below, which says the technology-specific slicing for OTN is in scope, and also the use cases for OTN justifies the need for slicing in OTN networks. And we also see the conclusion that the use of slice and OTN slicing, they are proper terms for OTN, as long as they are in the context of IETF network slicing. And an OTN slice in this case is indeed an IETF network slice when the IETF network is OTN. And the OTN slice controller in the context of IETF network slicing is considered as an IETF network slice realizer for OTN. And we, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't finished the last one. Yeah, so there are three other bullets. Just say, for example, layer 1 VPN, T topology, and T tunnels can be considered as realization of an OTN slice. And also, we briefly touched the discussion on whether OTN slice MBI is top-down, is used as a top-down configuration or bottom-up. And the conclusion is it is an intent interface which can be used as a top-down configuration to configure an OTN slice. It is also agreed that the OTN slice MBI should augment the IETF and NSA MBI. Next page. Yeah. So here are the main text updates. So we added descriptions for the three options of configuring an OTN slice, as I will show on the next page. And we also added text to clarify the relationship between OTN slice intent and its realization, which can be realized by any existing means, as shown on the previous page. We added text to clarify that OTN slice controller MBI is technology specific and augments the IETF network slice MBI. There are also some minor changes on the format of the document, and also we addressed Tom's comments in the mailing list. There are with other cosmetic updates. Next page. So here's an updated diagram on the right side, and in which we clearly marked the three different options as that can be used to create an OTN slice, with option 1 being the IETF network slice controller directly interface with the PNC. And in this case, no OTN slice controller is used. And in option 2, an IETF network slice controller could interface with an OTN slice controller and delegate the creation of an OTN slice to the OTN slice controller. And then in addition, we have a third option for any technology specific, for any OTN aware customer, as for example, an OTN OSS or BSS, to interface with an OTN slice controller to create a technology specific slice in the OTN domain. Next page. There is very little YANG model updates in this revision, and just to format, just on the formatting to conform with the YANG guidelines. And we plan to make additional updates once we clarify the way moving forward with OTN slicing. Next page. We also did some discussion on harmonizing with the network slice MBI YANG. As I think I already said, we agreed for the OTN slice YANG, OTN slice control MBI model to augment the network slice MBI model from TEAS. We are currently analyzing the model structures, and for the network slice MBI. Most specifically, we are checking whether the network slice MBI contains all the required parameters for OTN slicing, and whether which parameters are technology agnostic, which could be technology specific for IP, etc. And whether whether the base model, the network slice MPI, can support resource-based slicing with topologies. But if not, we will be adding this support in the OTN slicing model. Okay. Next page. Yeah. We are also harmonizing with another draft, the TEAS applicability of ACTN on slicing. And we have agreed for the author of that draft to give an update on the figure, which describes the mapping of IETF network slice controller to the ACTN MDSC in order to clarify the interfaces used in this mapping. The main thoughts towards that change is that we have an MDSC which could consist of a service orchestrator as well as a network orchestrator. And in that respect, the IETF NSC MBI slash OTN-SC MBI is equivalent to an interface between the MDSC service orchestrator and network orchestrator. And there's currently no official name for that, but I think we will leave for the author of that draft to clarify. Next page. So the next steps for this draft is we will continue to address the comments from the working group, and we'll started the work to align and augment IETF network slice YANG, and we'll add OTN technology specific definitions such as SLOs and other parameters according to the next discussions. Yeah. I think that's it. Any questions, comments? More than welcome.
Thank you. I have one. Fatai, you go first.
So it seems that ego is not in the conference call, and which makes your life easier. But anyway, I would like to double check if all of the open issues raised by ego have been addressed, or are there any open issues left?
I think that the main issue raised by Igor on whether it's necessary to have OTN slicing, I think it has been addressed and has been concluded as I shown in the slides. There are a few other questions about slicing, but I think it's not OTN specific. It's a slicing in general, right? That can be addressed by TEAS. So for example, one other question is whether like a slice could support just P2P, or it could support the P2P, P2MP, or MP2MP. It has to support all of them in order to be considered as a slicing service. I think those kind of questions are really relevant to network slicing in general and can be done in TEAS. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, in fact, I mean, Adrian was presenting the other day in TEAS, and he was asking if there were questions coming from Ccamp that still needed to be addressed, but I think that with the discussion that we had on the TEAS mailing list, we should consider all these issues more or less solved. If there is anything else left to discuss, let's put together a list of the issues still open, right? Good. Next one is done.
Hi guys, morning. Daniele, you can delegate the controls to me. I can click a button on your behalf.
Of course.
So hi, good morning. We want to provide a quick update on two documents. The FlexiGrid document, one was the topology, the other is the tunnel, and also just raise some issue that we've actually been having that not only affects these two documents, but also affects other Ccamp and also TEAS documents in the way that we use augmentations and when statements. So Daniele, I don't have the ability to advance the slides yet. I think it's quite technical.
I think that only works if you're projecting PDF that's been uploaded, and this looks like it's coming from uncooked PowerPoint on Daniel's
okay.
desktop.
Just
Then I'll turn them for you.
Thank you, sir. Great. So this document has been relatively finished. It's stable. We had various comments that we needed to address after the last call. So thank you, Tom and Adrian, for that. We really kind of just had to resolve the issue with the augmentations. That was the main issue with the document, and that's really why the document was slightly delayed. And I will cover that with some slides a little later. But for all intents and purposes, the topology document for FlexiGrid is now finished. And if the working group is happy with our solution for the augmentations, then we will proceed with this document and submit it. Next slide, please. So the tunnel document, oh, there is a slight typo there, just to see if anyone's paying attention still. We actually changed it from media channel to tunnel. But essentially, this is a document which isn't as mature as the FlexiGrid topology document. There's still quite a bit of work that needs to be done with the document. The code itself is relatively stable. but there has been some dependencies with other documents. There's also some specific sort of technical discussion that's required for things like the way the tunnel is used and dependencies or associations with the OTSIG, specifically the tunnel identifiers and sort of path setup. So there's also some further sort of ancillary work that's happening with the path computation document as well. So we just expect this document to have multiple issues that are going to be discussed. As you probably remember, we have a weekly call for the FlexiGrid documents. The focus is now really on the tunnel document itself, but we've also moved the path computation discussion into our FlexiGrid calls. So when you see the invites for the FlexiGrid discussion, I should really sort of add our sort of optical path computation topic to that as well. And those calls have been postponed just prior to and during IETF 113, but those will restart after 113. Next slide, please. In fact, Daniele, could you go on to the next slide now? I'll skip this one. So what was the issue that affected the topology document? And I think here we need to kind of highlight the great work that our Yang doctors do when they review the Yang code. There is obviously a lot of technology-specific content that they have to kind of pass. And for Ccamp and Ts, we have a tendency to use, with our Yang models, numerous augmentations, often numbering sort of tens, as many as 50, and one document I looked at had over 100 augmentations. And I suppose that's just the kind of the nature of the technology that we're dealing with. Most of these are controlled via when statements, and when we have the when statement sort of highlighted in blue there, I'm moving my mouse, but you can't see that. But essentially on the graphic there, we also have to sort of test for the presence of the container in the network type. And there's usually multiple levels as well. Could be just sort of 4 levels, could be sort of 10 levels. And because the augmentation takes place at different levels, we use the relative form of the XPath statement. So it's very important that those ... dashes are actually at the right level. And you can see, I think, on the right of that slide, all the yellow horizontal dots are essentially where we use those when statements. And that's just one single document, which is probably our topology document. And it's not as numerous, that when function is not as numerous as other Ts and Ccamp documents. So that's a lot of work that needs to be done, not obviously by just the Yang doctor, but anyone who's actually human who's sort of reading through or passing this document. Next slide, please. So there's good news, actually. There is a function. It's an axis or a construct, and it uses this thing called an ancestor function. So instead of having to sort of use a when statement and specify the relative location that you're augmenting, you can just specify the ancestor statement instead of using that relative path. And that makes things a lot easier for humans who are reading or reviewing this document. And again, not just the Yang doctors, but anyone, the vendors or potential users of this technology. So this is a cool feature, and we started using it extensively in our documents. And next slide, please. We hit an issue when we started uploading our new internet drafts through the submissions tool, because it turns out it breaks one of the tests that is performed. So the Yang link test is actually something that happens when you upload your document, or you can use it to sort of test code before you submit. And this we thought would be maybe just a minor issue. We kind of flagged it to the experts in NetMod, and we got a kind of mixed response, because there were several people in NetMod that thought, well, it's a legitimate use of Yang. It may be sort of esoteric, as in sort of fairly specialized, but that shouldn't deter us from using this function. There were other people who thought that actually we probably might be, I guess, what's the word? Yeah, suggested that we should not use this feature because it was not well understood, and clearly not all the tools actually support this ancestor function. We should revert back to our sort of relative path when using the augmentation, the when statement for augmentation. So we are kind of, we bounced sort of backwards and forwards for about a month, just really trying to figure out what to do here. Ultimately, from an implementation perspective, when it's read by machine, it's not a major issue. But considering we do expect more Yang models in the future, and there are sort of, I suppose, not just impacts here for Ccamp, but also T's. It would be worth kind of widening the discussion beyond the FlexiGrid folks to see what other people thought of this. For the time being, we've reverted back to our previous code base, as mentioned, so we're no longer using the ancestor function, which is a shame, but that's where we are now because we just wanted to move ahead with the document. And that's it. So I'd just like to open it up to the chairs and the rest of the working group.
Rob, you go first.
Sorry, I didn't realize I put my hand up and then the MeetTecher wasn't quite working. Yes, I actually think here my personal preference is if the existing one works, then that's going to give you the widest sort of deployability. Most tools are going to work with that. Whereas if you try and do the sort of clever thing, even though technically it might be allowed, I would suggest you're more likely to hit tooling issues in future. I think if we want to support this, I would suggest this goes on like the Yang Next issue tracker and is more explicitly thought about in the context of an updated version of Yang would be my view on this. I think keeping it simple, even though you've got the longer expressions, is probably the best way. That's just my personal opinion.
I was about to say exactly the opposite, so let's do what Rob suggests. I mean, my take here is that I mean, since if it was a document that we needed to publish tomorrow, I would suggest to revert absolutely. But I mean, since there are still many things to be done, I think we can wait and see if other working groups are embracing this functionality, and the tools will get upgraded accordingly. John, please.
Yeah, I actually put myself in line to say almost the same thing you did, which is, yeah, if we need to ship it right away, then do the pragmatic thing. But if we, can afford to take our time, then, I mean, it sounds from Rob's comment, and Rob, I'd be interested in your, read back if I'm understanding you right, that this isn't thought to be like we're using it wrong. It's just that we're, sort of pushing the envelope on the tooling. And so as long as our timeline allows the tooling to catch up, that I would think ought to be okay.
So Rob Wilton again. So I think I need to look a bit more closely exactly what's being used here. It's XPath in its usage in Yang. There's sort of some bits of XPath that they want, and some bits of XPath you just get because it's XPath. And in terms of the implementations, I suspect a lot of them just do the basic I want a path into the tree type thing, and don't do the more complicated stuff of actually allowing different sorts of ancestors and searches and things like that, because you can write these sort of more concise XPath expressions, but it's just more likely that tooling that should handle this just won't, because they just do the basic thing. So that's my concern, is that I'm not sure whether they will be running a generic XPath parser. It might also be, I'll have a look. The other thing is to see what the Yang author guideline says, because they may well also have some recommendations here. I think there's some text about that. I can check that. But I don't mind you trying it, but I think it's definitely worth having a wide discussion first before we ship something with this, because it may just be you're making your lives harder and the people who use this lives harder as well.
Okay, I mean that's great feedback, guys, and I think we totally agree with you that this isn't sort of a burning issue for us right now. We can continue with the document. Obviously, there are other documents that are sort of complementary to this anyway. We will highlight this, I guess, with some of the other document authors in Tees, and follow up again with the guys in NetMod, and just see where we are in another month or so.
Italo?
Yes, thank you. My concern is when we do. My understanding is from the NetMod discussion, also from the RSC 8407, is that it is a legitimate use ancestor. The problem is that if the tool does not support it, there will be a roadblock to the adoption by the market of our module, and that's why my suggestion is to go with a relative path. And in the future, if ancestor becomes supported, we can always use it, because it is much better from writing and reading. But if the tool is not supporting it, then we have a good one model and nobody implements them, which is not good to me. Thank you.
Hi, you are in the queue.
I think Italo already said what I wanted to say.
Great. Sorry to close the queue, but we needed to rush a little bit. Optical path computation. Italo, please.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, good. Okay. Sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm Italo Brusi from Norway. I'm presenting on behalf of co-authors an updated version of the optical path computation draft. Next slide, please. I cannot move. Okay. What is the status? Okay. Initial version of this draft has been presented in the last IETF meeting. And it is a quite straightforward work at this moment in time, because what we are doing here, we are basically augmenting the TPAC computation model, which is generic, with technology-specific informations, and we are using the common definition from the RFC 1993 bis and from layer 1 types. And the work we do, like the T generic, is in alignment with all the work which is ongoing on OTN, WZone, and flexible internal models. And as mentioned by Daniel, we are discussing any issues on the draft in the weekly call together with the flexibility topology and tunnel models. Next slide. What we changed from the previous version, we added the IANA considerations, and we added some acknowledgements, because an initial version of WZone and flexibility, the path computation model, has been taken out from their drafts, and we put acknowledgement to their authors for the initial work, or to the authors of those drafts. We didn't join this draft document. We didn't do any change on the OTN path computation, and the reason for that is because OTN tunnel model is quite stable, and we are already aligned. So as a consequence of OTN path computation is quite stable. We did major changes on the WZone and flexibility path computation based on the weekly call discussion, and in particular, the changes has been reflected in the RSC 1993 bis on layer 0 path constraint properties, and we are using them to configure the GSNR margin and report the estimated GSNR in the path computation response. Next slide. Okay, one open issue since the last meeting is again how many modules and how many documents. At this moment, we have one document with the 3 modules, and we see that the OTM pack computation is quite unrelated to the other documents, to the other modules, sorry, while WSON and FlexiGrid pack computation has a lot of commonalities among themselves, especially because all the OTSI related to the configuration is independent from whether the grid is fixed or flexible, while the label-specific information, which is related to the grid configuration, is different between WSON and FlexiGrid, and we are reusing the types in RSC 1993 bis, actually in RSC 1993, which are common between the pack computation and WSON and topology models. So the doubts that we have is what do we do here? And we had some discussion in the last few days among co-authors, and our proposal as co-authors is maybe we can have one document, we can split into 2 documents. In one document, we develop the OTM pack computation, which is quite independent from the other one, and also has a different maturity level. And in the second document, we try to put together into one module as well, the WSON and FlexiGrid pack computation configuration modules into one. We need to understand how to reconcile the issue with the label configuration, but we can exploit this option and see whether it is technically feasible. So this will be the proposal. And next slide. So the next steps is to address any comment and feedbacks we receive. We can complete the document with the security and manageability considerations, which are currently empty. And we keep alignment with the discussion ongoing with the relative tunnel models, because the path constraints and path properties are the same. And we want to finalize the modules document structure, and we had the proposal discussed before, and we think the document is ready for the adoption of working group. And if you split into documents, both documents will be ready for adoption. Thank you.
Omiana, please.
Hear me? I'm trying to ask a question for clarification on the modeling dependency. It looks you mentioned the layer 0 and layer 1 types would be how to say this work depends on the layer 0 and 1 type. And is there any other models this work depends on?
It depends also on the IETF pack computation, and I will double check. I don't remember any other dependency.
Okay, then my personal opinion is the number of documents should be only increased if the dependency is different. So that means maybe we can have one for layer 1 and the other one for layer 0. But in the document, actually, you can have multiple models as you like.
I agree. I mean, probably merging WSON and FlexiGrid could be a good idea. I mean, in the end, WSON can be considered a subcase of FlexiGrid. Keeping layer 0 and layer 1 separate is a good idea as well, because I mean we have different implementations that only care about optical and only care about OTN. So keeping the documents separate there is a good idea as well. But I mean, this is just let me say a reflection. I'm open to whatever the working group believes is the best idea. Any other opinion here? Okay, if not, we can move to the next slot.
Okay. Hello.
Hello. Please.
Hello. Thank you. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Chao from Huawei. I'm glad to do this presentation on behalf of all the contributors. Our job is dealing with network hardware inventory management and provide a young data model which can be used in the northbound of the network controller. Okay, please next page. Our job was presented in last IETF meeting, both in Ccamp and OPSAWG, and we got some valuable suggestions. In particular, we suggested to target to the broader scope and define a technology agnostic model. So at first, we removed the optional constraint in draft name and title. And based on the feedback from OPSA WG discussion, we have analyzed some inventory related draft in OPSA WG, and we have found no overlap. Therefore, we have clarified that the scope of this draft is for hardware inventory management on network scale. We also replaced the terminology of shelf with chases because chases is a more recognized technology agnostic term. Um, another major update is that we have presented a stability issue in the draft. That this issue may lower integration efficiency between systems. Okay, please next page. In the current model proposal, most of the objects, just like chases, slot, subslot, etc., are defined as network elements component, and they are distinguished by their class. In real network scan scenario, if the upper system want to do a full synchronization, we cannot retrieve all the network elements, including their components, at one request, because no system can bear such huge amount of data. And the number of each component type in one network element is not certain, so that it is hard to use pagination. So one possible way is that the network controller provide retrieving data from network elements one by one. And secondly, in currently relational database implementation are commonly used in ICT industry, and for different inventory objects, they are saved in different tables, both in the network controller and the upper system. So when doing the full synchronization, the network controller shall combine component objects together according to this model structure, while the upper system needs to classify and sort them into different groups. This combination and sorting progress is inefficient. Even if the time consumed for one network element is not too much, but it increase linearly with the number of network elements and could become hours with tens, thousand network elements scale network. Okay, next page, please. This slide provides some detail on the workflow when doing the full synchronization. In the first step, the client can collect some other inventory objects which are not defined under the network element. For example, equipment room and racks. And then the client can start to synchronize the network elements data and the components underlying. But before that, you need to retrieve the identifier of all the network element. But this step don't take too much time. Okay, next page. And then the client will retrieve the components of each network element one by one. When the server receives the request, internally, it will query its different table to construct this response. The chases, the slot, the border, the pause should be combined together to a single component list. The client receives this uh, component list response, it cannot recognize them quickly, and they need to sort them by the class attributes one by one. These two steps, step 18 and step 19, are time consuming and could lead to an efficiency issue in large scale network. This efficiency issue has also been found with other young data model integration, and a mail has been sent to Ccamp, TIS, and NEMO mailing list to gather more feedback from the wider group. Okay, next page, please. As a summary, the draft has been updated to clarify its scope and describe the possible efficiency issue with the current model. And for the next step, we believe that more discussion in Ccamp, NEMO, and TIS working group is required. Then we can determine a final model structure. In parallel, we will analyze more use cases considering other technologies. And we think that the draft is ready for working group adoption, and the technical issue can be addressed through normal working group process. Also, and contributors have a weekly meeting sorry, here I made some mistake. Every Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. In American Central Standard Time. Anyone who is interested with inventory is welcome to join this call. Just let us know. Okay. The discussion minute and most of the information can also be found in the GitHub repository. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks to you. I'll start with the questions. So during the week at the routing area meeting, we were requested to report on work that might need coordination with other working groups. And we brought up Ocean slicing, where we already have a pretty good interaction with the TIS. And this is one of the other topics that we brought up. I didn't remember that you already had the draft presented in OPSA working group. That is extremely good. So if they are happy to have the draft being progressed as it is in Ccamp, I think that we can make a poll. Is my understanding correct that the OPSA working group is happy to have the work being done in Ccamp?
Yes. In last meeting, for OPSA WG, they suggest us to run this draft in Ccamp, and we also discussed in Ccamp last meeting, and we agreed to stay in Ccamp working group. Okay.
Okay. Omian, you were in the queue. You disappeared. Okay, then Rob, please.
Hi, sorry, Rob Wilton. I've not been able to review this, but I do think that with the overlap with maybe the entity Yang model that's there today, maybe this is a network-wide one. I think I need to review this. It may be that this might be better to do in the ops area rather than Ccamp. I just want to understand what the scope of this document is. I want to make sure that we get sufficient reviews across the right areas to make sure that we're not standardizing a very generic thing within this working group and it's not getting sufficient reviews. So I think that's the key thing to me, is making sure we get those reviews. I'm not saying it can't be done here, but that's one aspect. The other comment on in terms of the structure, again, I haven't actually reviewed the document, so it's hard to comment, but in terms of flexible models, it's worth looking at the Open Config Platforms Yang model. because they have a way of being quite generic and flattening a tree-like structure down into a list with parent and subcomponent or children pointers that allows you to have fairly generic structures and still have the data. So I think that approach may possibly work here, or it's worth looking at.
Okay, thank you. For the first question, actually we are open for the whether to run this job in Ccamp and OpenSAWG, and if you consider that our analyze on the OLED is not sufficient, or maybe we still need to do some work, and maybe we can have a check through email after this meeting. Okay, and for the second question about the trick structure integration, and if there's is a lot of level, and the tree is very deep, and we think that there could be issue when doing the integration. And I also send the email in the Ccamp working group, and maybe you can have a look, and then we can have a further discussion. Okay, thank you.
It could easily. So, sorry, I was just saying that it could easily be that the draft might end up being split into two parts, one of which is generic and will be progressed in the OPSA working group, and there might be a more specific one that we can take in Ccamp. That's a fairly viable option as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, it's just trying to find the reviews, get the right reviews. I'm not that concerned about where the document's done. It's just making sure we get the right comments and things. If you drop me an email, then I can follow up the discussion on that side, and also I can give you points in terms of the structure. But I need to review this anyway. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
In the good order to come on right after Robert. Yeah, actually, I agree with Daniele saying that the OPSAWG experts is feeding back saying that this module is quite close to the hardware inventory, and it looks well. Currently, the term inventory is a little bit misused or overused in the OPSAWG, and the same term are having different meaning. So it would be extremely useful to clarify the scope for each inventory related work, and some of the experts feedback with us this is more closer to the hardware inventory, and it's okay to run in either side. And regarding the kind of generic units and the technology specific features from the hardware inventory perspective, we do think there are quite high percentage of similarity, and that means if we only stand from the perspective of optical, there may not be very much technology specific augmentation like we did in topology of tunnel.
It's just some quick comments on the scalability problem, because this model is used as the NBI of a controller, which interfaces with the mini network nodes, right? So if we try to get all the inventory data from all the nodes in the network, the data is going to be huge, and that's where the scalability problem is coming from. Whereas the open configure model, let's say it's a single network element, so the data is not as much as what we would deal with from a controller perspective. And we have discussed this issue in our weekly meetings, and I mean, it would be rather interesting to hear what the community is dealing with that level of data, and how they deal with the scalability. Because certainly our goal is to not not interfere with the data model structure just because there's a scalability problem. I think it would rather we need to find a generic way of dealing with that problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. Peter?
Thank you.
The folks working on this project should really have a look at the open config platform model Rob was pointing out. I don't really understand whether there's really a scalability issue, but yeah, I think this should be considered in my opinion.
Okay. Okay, you're still in the queue. I think we can move to the next slot. We have 20 minutes left for 2 presentations, so 10 minutes each as planned. The next presenter, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I'm Xiaobing from ZTE. Present this talk on behalf of colleagues from China Mobile and ZTE. Next page. This draft provides some configuration requirements based on some policy standards in the draft, and also it provides some configuring illustrations of Flex Group and the Flex Client based on Flex configuration model. Next page. Okay. Yeah, here are the standards. Are being published a series of FlexE implementation agreement, including version 1.1 to 2.2. And the FlexE project will be supporting a variety of Ethernet MAC rates, may not correspond to an existing Ethernet PHY rate. And in ITU 823, it uses the FlexE, the frame format, and it also defines some FlexE adaptation functions, child termination functions, and relevant management information. In IETF Ccamp group, there are several drafts talking about FlexE frame controls and the configuration in models. Currently, we think the FlexE configuration model draft get a good catch of previous discussions about FlexE modeling and gives a basic FlexE configuration model. That's a good start point to put forward the FlexE modeling. Thank you. Next page. Based on the standards in the draft mentioned and some discussion in the mail list, configuration requirements are summarized into 3 categories. Here you can see Flex Group, Flex Calendar, and Flex Client. For the Flex Group, it includes such requirement as configuring the Flex Group well-defined configuration, and if inconsistency exists, notifications to be invoked. For the Flex Calendar, the requirements include configuration, updating the usage state of calendar slots, and the verification. For Flex Client, the requirements include assigning calendar slots, adding or removing Flex clients into or from the Flex group. Next page. Okay. This figure shows an example configuration including a Flex group between the Flex multiplex node and the Flex demultiplex node, which with 4 MACD files bonded together, and 2 Flex clients are carried over this Flex group. The Flex group should be configured before the Flex client, and the initial configuration commands could be from external management system or SDM controller. The flex configure model shows the necessary parameters about flex group and the flex client. Listed model for could be used for further augments or extension. Next page. Thank you. This the right part, the young tree is accepted from the Flex-E configuration model, and on the right part, some of the data node are described and explains where they come from, when will be configured, what state will be updated. Next page. Here is an example showing configuring the flex group in the Flexi-Max and the Flexi-D-Max. You can go to the details if you're interested. Next page. This part, the red part of the young tree is also exported from Flex configure model. And on the right part, details are described and explained. And the next page. This page shows Flex configuration, Flex clients, two Flex clients configuration in the Flexi-Max and the Flexi-D-Max. Next page. Next steps, and we'll update the draft according to the work group feedbacks, and to propose merge this draft into the Flex configured model draft. And I hope the merged draft would be adopted as work group draft in the near future. Thank you.
Rob, please.
Hi, Rob Wilton. Yes, thank you for this. I think I know that the work group was trying to work on Flexi previously, and then that work sort of got stopped. And so I'm really pleased to see this coming back. I think it's great for the IETF to work on a model in this area and to get that done. So that I'm really pleased with. I also agree that merging these two drafts together, the one that's talking about applicability and the actual Yang model, that makes sense to me. Often you sort of see examples of how to use the Yang models in the appendix. So that's a good thing to do. One comment I've got in terms of the current structure of the model, this is probably comment more on the other draft than this one, is I questioned a bit about having the Flexi client configuration under the client interface rather than having it under the sort of Flexi container that you've got on slide 5. So I'm talking about slide 5 and 7. And my reasoning for that is that the Flexi client configuration isn't really so much about the client interface, as in everything else that you'd normally expect to be on there, but it's actually related to how the Flexi interfaces are set up. So if you look at, for example, the time slot list, that list isn't sort of independent for each client interface. You need to make sure that the time slots that you're using are sort of organized with the other client interfaces under the same Flexi group interface. So that's one comment I have. I don't think this is like a must-have change that you have to make, but I think it would make the model a bit more consistent in my mind. So that would be my recommendation. But I've also provided that to the authors directly when I reviewed this. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
There is also a question from Dieter. How is this Flexi draft related to draft Wang Ccamp Flexi Yang configuration model 02? If you wanted to answer. What is the relationship between the two drafts?
In this draft, we give the example based on the Flex configured model, the first draft, and also we summarize some requirements, I think that part did not exist in the first draft.
I mean, I agree with Rob when saying that these two drafts seem to be perfectly fitting together and merging into a single one. I only have one question. I mean, I'm seeking for a confirmation from you. There was another draft, another configuration model draft a while back that was left to expire, that seemed to be competing with the configuration model, not with the one that you just presented, but more with the configuration model. I don't know how the let me say the competition was solved. It was just that the other one was left to expire, or a solution, a common ground was found between the two drafts in this configuration model. Because I mean, I'm happy to merge these two drafts and progress them, but I would like to make sure that this is something that everyone is happy with. It's not that we are leaving something competing behind and forgetting about it.
We don't want to renew the previous draft, and we want to merge this draft and with the Flex configure model draft.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's fine. Thanks. We are ready for the last presentation.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Shen Liu. I'm from China Mobile. That's the co-authors of this draft. So, this item. So I will go through quickly. First, we need an optical network to access cloud to support high quality connections for areas such as finance, medicine, and OTT companies. So previously, usually we use IP networks to access the network, but we suffer from issues such as touring and congestion of packets. So optical transport network start to play a more important role in carrying traffic to access clouds. But there are some shortcomings for current optical transport network. For example, right now optical transport network usually have unified flows. It cannot identify the priority of the services. Also, we need provide guaranteed performance for optical network. Another thing is optical network need to support small granularity for service to access clouds, because there are many enterprise and customer to access cloud. Another thing is we need to support massive connections, and the network should be dynamic. Next slide, please. So previously we have exampled several use cases. The first one is multiple cloud accessing. We need to support multi-point to multi-point access rather than previously just point-to-point access. Next slide, please. The second use case is high quality list line. Previously, high quality private LAN anytime support large bandwidth, low latency, high security, high reliability, and the proposed control and management system of the new optical network should support differentiation of SLA adapted to dynamic performance changes, be aware of traffic demand, and faster deployment to customer-led events. Next slide, please. Another example is cloud virtual reality. It requires high specifications, and high demand. So also the control and management need to support awareness of service for them to start and end time and the dynamically expanding the bandwidth. Next slide, please. So in summary, the requirement for the control and management service for optical network to access cloud need to support the following core features. The first is it should support various such as R1 to R3 service to access the cloud. The second feature is service awareness. It should know the start at the end of the service and the dynamic change the SLA according to the requirement of customers. The third thing is reliability. It should adapt to the network with fast recovery. And the last thing is scalability, because it need to support massive access. So next slide, please. So this draft gave the update of the optical to cloud problem and statement. And this document now is more focused on optical specific characteristics, and it also focuses on control and management systems. So the intention of this draft is to confirm the usefulness of the optical network for accessing cloud, and this draft add further gap analysis and the problem statement, and we call for interest and joint contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, please.
Hi guys. Thank you for the presentation. I just noticed on your summary slide that you're looking for contributions and sort of interest in the work. The use cases were quite high level. It will be really interesting to know what specific requirements have been derived from those use cases. The point I wanted to make is that there's a European Commission-funded project called TerraFlow that I'm a member of, and we're also working on this area, sort of using an optical underlay for interconnecting cloud resources for terabit packet services. So there is maybe some interesting requirements that we've identified in that project. Although it is research, it has commercial applicability. There are operators involved in the project. So I'm wondering if there's maybe some technical findings, conclusions that we've sort of documented that may be useful for this work. I will post those maybe in the chat window and follow up with you offline.
That would be great. Aumiana?
Thank you for you to raise the very important point.
To add a few more information from the previous days on this IETF meeting. We are also aware of some nice work from IETF, from the Ccamp, and from some other working groups talking about the future of the routing protocols. And it looks we are also, from this draft, we are also evaluating where is the future gaps and try to find the next objective we are setting to the current protocol stack. And we would like to invite more review and comments from the working group. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you a lot. And for once, we are perfectly on time. That's it for today. Thanks a lot, everyone, for participating. Apologies to Rob for producing more work for him than most of his working groups. And thanks a lot to him for being so active in helping us moving forward our younger work. That's it for today. Thanks a lot. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.